Hey everyone, so this video, what I want to go over is how you can communicate to and configure the AC2000 port on a T2000 heat trace controller. So the T2000 heat trace controller is a pretty old heat trace controller, but we still see lots of these in service. So specifically, when you come up to one of these heat trace controllers, typically the first controller in the first rack of a T2000 panel will be a communication card, and typically it'll be an AC2000 plus card. There are some older communication cards that were available with the T2000, but this is going to be the most common. So the purpose is when you're coming up to a heat trace controller is you need to know how you can communicate to this controller. The AC2000 is the communication port in which we do so. And how we can communicate to it is either locally through a serial port on the front, remotely via an RS-45 connection on the back, or an Ethernet connection. And the purpose of this card is we can connect to this heat trace controller with either Raychem Supervisor or Smart Trace, and then this card is essentially then communicating to the individual heat trace control modules here. So when we first come up to this heat trace controller, we might not know the Modbus address, might not know the Ethernet, but need to be able to figure that information out. So in order to do that, what we do is we first take out the AC2000 card out of the rack, and inside you're going to see some dip switches. And there is a little guide here, but dip switch 1 gives you the ability to put this module into config mode. So we're going to put this in config mode. We're going to insert the card, and then what we're going to do is put in a serial cable. So I have a USB to serial cable right here. If I connect it properly. Okay, we're going to connect into it. Then we're going to go over to the computer, and then what we're going to do is connect to it. So the first thing we have to do is, especially since I'm using a USB to serial converter, is I need to actually see what COM port I'm using. So I can go over to Device Manager, and in Device Manager I can open up ports, and I can see that this USB to serial port is using COM3. So that's important to know. Next thing we're going to do is open up a piece of software called COM Controller Configuration Utility. This will be available on the knowledge base page here as well. And then this is what the software looks like. So we're going to select which COM port we're using. We're just going to select connect. So I can see that I'm now connected to the device, and then I have a couple tabs that are at the top. So once I'm connected, I can go to the configuration tab and I see 3 options here. So one is telling me how to configure or what the settings are for either the remote port. This will be the RS-45 connection port on the back of the T2000 rack, the local port, what I'm actually connected to right now, or the Ethernet port. This is typically the only item that we're changing is either the Modbus address that's set here. Almost always, the baud rate is always going to be 9600, parity, none, stop bits 2, and protocol is always going to be RTU. Same over here on the Ethernet, we have the ability of changing the Ethernet, the IP address, net mask, etc. So once I've confirmed this, I have the ability to either change it or just confirm. So I've confirmed that the Modbus address here is Modbus address 6. I can then exit this. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is afterwards is then go back to our AC2000 and then put the controller in run mode. So we're going to come back here, dip switch 1, put it into run mode, and then reconnect. Then what I can do is use a tool like Modbus poll to confirm that we can talk to the heat trace controller. So we're going to connection, serial port, COM port 3, and then set the Modbus address to 6, and then we'll see that we're going to see data. So we can see our transmitting, we don't have any errors, and we're seeing the data that we're bringing in. So we know that we're successfully communicating to this heat trace controller. Anyway, that's it everyone. Hope this was useful.